Welcome to Tritiyo Matra. Bangladesh has had a long and fruitful relationship with Canada ever since diplomatic relations with Bangladesh were established in 1972. Canada has provided over $4 billion in international assistance to Bangladesh since 1972. Current Canadian programs in Bangladesh support mutual priorities in the areas of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls, health including sexual and reproductive health and rights, skill training and support for the ready-made garment sector. Canada's popularity is also increasing as a study destination of choice for Bangladeshi students. Joining us today to discuss Canada-Bangladesh bilateral relations is Dr. Lilly Nicholls, High Commissioner for Canada in Bangladesh. Dr. Lilly Nicholls has 30 years of experience in international affairs. Her career has spanned 6 continents and includes leadership roles in government, international organizations, and civil society. She has worked with the United Nations Development Program in Central America and New York, and she advised civil society networks on global poverty reduction and gender equality before joining the Canadian International Development Agency (CIDA) as a senior economist in 1999. She was a deputy director in the Andes Division, head of cooperation in Cuba, director of planning in the Afghanistan Task Force, and director of mainland Southeast Asia. From 2015 to 2018, she contributed to the consultations on and the formulation of Canada's feminist international assistance policy. She served as Ambassador of Canada to Panama from 2018 to 2021. High Commissioner, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Silur, for inviting me and having me. Very grateful to be here.
Madam High Commissioner, you assumed your office here in Dhaka at the very end of 2021 during the height of the pandemic. How has your experience been so far in Bangladesh?
Well, you know, when I first arrived in Bangladesh, we were still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So my first few months in Bangladesh were difficult. We were restricted in terms of what we could do, who we could see. So that obviously affected the earlier part of my year here. My focus at the time was very much on ensuring that the team at the embassy, including all the families, remained healthy. Luckily, everybody was well. I'm also very impressed with the way that Bangladesh handled the pandemic. I think it's an example to the world. Luckily, since May, we have been able to get out, and luckily for me, I've been able to travel throughout Bangladesh and to see different parts of the country, whether it's been visiting remote schools in Rangpur or tea gardens in Sylhet or the port facility in Chittagong. I've been so impressed by the people of Bangladesh, and people often say that the friendliness of the Bangladeshis is unique, and I think it's true, and I think they really are the country's biggest asset. So for me, it's been a fabulous first year. I'm now completing my first year anniversary. And of course, on top of that, being here during the celebration of our Jubilee, 50 years of Canada-Bangladeshi relations, has been a true honor for me.
That's fascinating. The relationship between Canada and Bangladesh started in 1972. Canada recognized Bangladesh immediately after independence on 14th February 1972. Since then, how have bilateral relations between Canada and Bangladesh evolved from your perspective?
You know, for us, it's really important that Canada was one of the first countries to recognize Bangladesh's independence. We were also one of the first countries to send food aid when Bangladesh needed it most, when it was in the midst of a famine. So we were there from the beginning, and that is something that really characterized the earlier years of the relationship. At the beginning, it was mostly about international assistance. But from the very outset, the relationship was built on a partnership of mutual respect. And to this day, that is very much what characterizes our bilateral relations. But as Bangladesh has developed, and Bangladesh really has done exceptionally well, reducing extreme poverty from 90% to 9%, so that is really unprecedented. And our own international assistance has evolved. over time as Bangladesh has developed and its needs have changed. But also the relationship has become extremely multifaceted. It goes well beyond foreign aid. So for example, we have a very robust trade relationship. We're right now doing almost $3 billion worth of mutual trade both ways. We're also extremely involved in the security diplomacy. We're working closely and supporting Bangladesh's leadership in the area of women, peace and security, where Bangladesh is currently leading the Chief of Staff's Defense Network on peace and security. We work on press freedom, especially highlighting the important role that women play in the media. So we are really involved in many, many, many spheres together.
Great. Dr. Lilly, according to the High Commission, Canada's relations with Bangladesh are focused on development cooperation, trade and investment, and people-to-people links. Among these three key focus points, which are you currently investing your time in the most at the moment?
So you've named three areas that are really important for our work. They're also very much part of Canada's new Indo-Pacific strategy. In each case, we're doing things that are preparing Bangladesh as Bangladesh graduates from LDC country status and takes off and becomes a high middle income country. In the case of international assistance, as I mentioned, our own international assistance is being modernized to prepare Bangladesh as it becomes a high middle income country. So while initially our international assistance focused on helping Bangladesh with basic health or education services, today we're looking at new areas. Where is it that Bangladesh is going to need skills in the future? So we're very much looking at that. In international assistance, a very important component as well is our work with the Rohingya refugees. Canada was from the beginning there for Bangladesh. We recognize the role that Bangladesh has played in the crisis in helping the Rohingya, and Canada continues to be there, active and supporting the Rohingya and Bangladesh's efforts. So that is, within the area of international assistance, some of our priorities. In trade, as I mentioned, our trade has grown about 5 times in the last decade. And actually, Bangladesh has the benefit. You have the trade. You have the trade surplus. We are trading. Mostly, Canada is exporting agricultural commodities to Bangladesh. A lot of the lentils, the wheat, the oil, the canola oil consumed in Bangladesh comes from Canada. Some of the potash fertilizer as well. And Bangladesh is mostly importing ready-made garments. So we have a very strong trade relationship, but we're looking to diversify it, to go into other areas, and also to add investment to that as well. So one of the priority things this year has been to put together a joint working group of both Canadian and Bangladeshi business leaders who are looking at how we grow our trade. And then finally, in terms of people-to-people connections, that's something that my team will tell you. I'm personally very passionate about because I believe that Canadians and Bangladeshis are naturally curious, naturally entrepreneurial and friendly. So I see people-to-people connections as a way of learning about each other, bringing our cultures closer together. So whether it be, through exploring art and, artists that are painters, or looking at dance, or filmmakers, we're trying to find ways in which we can connect Bangladeshi artists and Canadian artists together. And in the process, we also benefit from learning about Bangladeshi culture, which is so rich as well.
According to the information provided by the High Commission, trade between our countries exceeds 2 billion Canadian dollars annually, based mostly on agricultural exports from Canada and imports of ready-made garments from Bangladesh, as you said. Do you think there is a potential to increase this volume of trade significantly in the near future?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, really, we're actually much closer now to $3 billion of aid, of trade, both ways, between Canada and Bangladesh. And it is growing. But as I mentioned, it'll be very important to diversify the areas that we trade in. The joint working group that we created that I mentioned has made some interesting recommendations. They're recommending that we explore new areas, such as, for example, IT, so information technology is an area of great potential here in Bangladesh, pharmaceuticals, and another area that they've identified is agribusiness and green technology. So these are all, we spoke about Bangladesh equipping itself to become a high middle income country, and these are all areas of tremendous potential where we can do much more trade among each other. But I do want to also mention that for our trade relationship to grow and to diversify, there are key areas that are going to be very, very important as well. I mean, one of them is free trade. Canada, you may know, is a free trade nation. And I think even though sometimes protectionism is necessary at particular times or particular areas, I think it is important to look at how we liberalize our trade relationship both ways. So that, I think, is something very important that we're beginning to think about already, especially as Bangladesh graduates from LDC country status. And this will affect its access to the generalized preferential tariff system. Another important thing is also skills. What skills do Bangladeshis need to be able to expand their trade? And Canada has the benefit of actually being the most educated country in the world. And we have, 100 universities, 200 colleges. So one of the areas we're looking at is how do we strengthen skills development in the new technologies and new areas and work with Bangladesh in that area. And then I think the third area that is going to be really critical for our trade relationship, but also for Bangladesh's future long-term development, is the whole area of research and innovation. And this is something that Prime Minister Hasina herself spoke to me about when I first met her. She's very keenly aware of the importance of this research. And this is an area where Canada is working with Bangladesh. And next week, in fact, we will be welcoming a delegation from the University of Saskatchewan, which has got a partnership with the BARC, the Bangladeshi Agricultural Research Center, and together they're going to be establishing the Bangabandhu Pierre Elliott Trudeau Agricultural Technological Center. And this will pave a way for a new era in agricultural research and collaboration between our two countries.
Canada has been an important development partner to Bangladesh since independence. According to the Canadian High Commission, Canada has provided over $4 billion of international assistance to Bangladesh since 1972. However, as you know, Bangladesh will soon be graduating from the list of least developed countries in the world and become a recognized developing country. How might the nature of development assistance change on part of Canada after graduation?
So I think that the secret to our partnership in international assistance has been this mutual respect among ourselves. From the beginning, there was a tremendous emphasis on ensuring that the assistance that Canada provided was based on Bangladeshi needs, but even more fundamentally, on strengthening Bangladeshi capacities and institutions. And that has been a guiding thread throughout our development work. And we are very proud to have been among the first organizations to recognize BRAC, for example. Yeah. We have a 30-year partnership with BRAC. BRAC is world renowned today, but when we first started working together, people didn't know what BRAC is. And BRAC, of course, is now known around the world for revolutionizing the microcredit movement and women's empowerment. So we've been an early supporter and continue to support organizations like that. Also the ICDDRB, the Center for Diarrheal Diseases, which is world renowned for its research. Canada has been supporting them and working with them for 30 years. So part of our relationship is continuing to support those Bangladeshi institutions that we value as partners. But the relationship, as I mentioned before, also needs to evolve as Bangladesh develops and has new needs. 3 areas in which we're looking at now and trying to modernize our international assistance are: one, the area of climate change. because we know that this is an area of tremendous vulnerability for Bangladesh.
Indeed.
Canada is a leader in this area globally. We've provided $5.3 billion to help developing countries deal with climate change issues. But we're now also trying to do this in Bangladesh, so we're increasing our cooperation in this area. The second area, I already mentioned it, is this whole area of technical vocational education. You know, when our first foreign aid was provided, we were helping with basic education, basic health. Bangladesh doesn't need us anymore in those areas. 83% of Bangladeshis complete primary school. So you don't need us to provide those basic services. So we're looking more at how can we bring in Canadian know-how and technical expertise in areas like skills development in post-secondary education, including for men and women, making sure that women also get those opportunities, that they don't drop out of school after secondary high school. And the third area that maybe I can mention that it's a very interesting area is the whole area of blended financing. Sometimes it's called impact investment or innovative financing. And here, because as Bangladesh graduates from LDC country status, it will have gradually less access to certain official development assistance windows and mechanisms. And we're already beginning to think about that. So what are ways in which we blend private sector and official development assistance funding in creative ways and combine, public sector and private sector development initiatives that have a social impact? So this is like a third area that we're exploring.
High Commissioner Lilly Nicholls, in an interview, stated that Bangladesh is a key part of Canada's recently unveiled Indo-Pacific strategy. According to you, this new strategy will usher in a new era of making Canada attractive and long-term significant partner in the region. Would you please elaborate on this statement a bit more for our audience, and what exactly is Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy?
The new Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy is distinctly a Canadian strategy, whose chief objective really is to promote Canadian interests in the Indo-Pacific region, but also to position Canada as a long-term, as a reliable and a significant player in the region and a partner that is going to be there in the Indo-Pacific. So it is a change maker in Canadian foreign policy. It is also a whole of government approach, and it is extremely comprehensive. I think that's one of the characteristics of the Canadian Indo-Pacific strategy. It includes objectives in peace and security, but also in trade and investment, in green the technologies and sustainable development, people-to-people connection. So it's extremely broad, and the strategy comes with a series of investments in the Indo-Pacific. And all the areas that are priorities in the strategy are areas in which we are already involved with in Bangladesh, and we're very interested in looking at how we expand those relationships further. And I think that the strategy is also, to ask your question about the regional role it plays. The IPS, as we call it, is a recognition of how important the Indo-Pacific is to the world and to Canada. It recognizes that 2/3 of GDP is going to be coming from Asia, that 2/3 of the middle class will be in the Indo-Pacific. 1 out of 5 Canadians is born in the Indo-Pacific. We also have 400,000 Canadians living in the Indo-Pacific, and the majority of our students come from the region as well. So the policy recognizes that the world's future and Canada's future are intricately linked to the security, prosperity of the Indo-Pacific region.
The Indo-Pacific region is fast becoming the frontier that almost all world powers are focusing on in their own ways. Do you believe that the future of this region will have a significant effect on the future of Canada as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. As I mentioned already, we have a large portion of Canadians that come from the Indo-Pacific. We have 100,000 Canadians that are Bangladeshi Canadians, and they're already contributing to both of our countries, but also the international system, the rules-based system depends in an Indo-Pacific that is open, that is free, and that is secure. And here I go back to critical issues such as the Rohingya crisis, because the resolution of that crisis is key also for the stability of the region and for our security. And you know, Canada and Bangladesh are very similar in that neither one of us is a superpower. We're both multilateralists, we're both peacekeepers, we both value diversity and inclusion. So I think that for us, having a region, an Indo-Pacific region that is stable, that is free, that is democratic, is extremely important for both of our futures.
Last October, Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said that Canada seeks membership to the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, IPF, to further economic cooperation in the region. What kind of economic opportunity does Canada hope to acquire by participating in this framework?
So Canada has already announced its intention to join the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And Canada is a Pacific country. We already also are, as I mentioned, a free trader. One of the unique characteristics that Canada has, of course, we're well known to have a free trade agreement in the Americas, but we also are the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. So Canada depends on that free trade relationship worldwide as well as here in the region, and it's something that it can contribute to the region.
High Commissioner, Canada has expressed its concern about the state of human rights in Bangladesh. In your opinion, what are the human rights in Bangladesh at the moment, and do you see things improving? And are there particular concerns you hold in this regard?
Well, let me say first of all that for Canada and for Canadians, democracy, human rights, and prosperity are completely intertwined. They're inseparable. And they're very much part of our foreign policy, the promotion of equality, of inclusion, diversity, freedom of expression. These are part of the DNA of all Canadians and of our foreign policy. They're key tenets of our foreign policy. So these are things that we promote abroad in all the countries that we're involved in, as well as at home. And of course, this includes part of our work here in Bangladesh. You know, in addition to that, I mean, I want to, really highlight that it would be for Bangladeshis and Bangladeshis only to determine the future of their country and to be part of their own democratic process. But Canada does believe that, it is important to promote these values. And as the election nears, I think it will be increasingly important to have a wide diversity of voices, be it from civil society, from media, from opposition parties. It will be important not to in any way muffle those voices. Those are going to be key to the future of Bangladeshi democracy and the quality of its governance. In some areas, we have essentially expressed the hope that acts such as the Digital Security Act won't be abused to muffle those very important diverse voices.
Indeed. Here is another issue. Canada is stated to have a feminist international assistance policy, which values the promotion of feminism and the rights of women and girls. How do you see the state of women's empowerment in Bangladesh? And is Canada particularly invested in promoting women's rights in Bangladesh?
Thank you for asking me about my favorite issue. As you mentioned, I was one of the very privileged group of Canadians that contributed to the development of Canada's foreign international assistance policy, the feminist policy, and it's one of the things I'm proudest of. Essentially what that policy says, it's actually quite radical. I mean, Canada's feminist foreign policy is based on the premise that women's empowerment, women's rights, women's voice are essential for the eradication of poverty, but also for building a more prosperous and a peaceful world. And if you believe that, and if you take that seriously, you're talking about a very transformative approach to foreign policy. And here in Bangladesh, we apply that in a number of innovative ways. And as we discussed, Silur, this is something that we've been doing for many years, and I think that it's been possible because Bangladesh has such leadership in this area. From the NGOs, we work so closely with so many of the civil society groups that have championed women's empowerment. BRAC, of course, we mentioned already, but there's the Manusher Jono Foundation, Nori Poco, so many others. So you are leaders, and you're world-renowned for your work in women's empowerment and particularly the microcredit movement. You're also world-renowned for your female leadership at the very, very highest levels, right? And you have exceptional leaders, such as your Prime Minister, the Minister of Education, the Speaker of the Parliament. So that is an advantage. But it goes beyond that. Also, the legislation in Bangladesh is quite advanced in areas like domestic violence or, for example, the elimination of child marriage. So I think this is an area where we have a common agenda, where we can do a lot together. Canada's International Assistance Program is very much focusing, for example, on promoting solutions that contribute to women's empowerment through interventions such as working in areas such as sexual and reproductive health rights, child marriage, domestic violence. These are all things that we can't take for granted that are resolved. There's much to do, and there was a bit of a rollback of some of the achievements during COVID as well. And there's areas where in Bangladesh, for example, violence against women is a challenge, as it is in Canada as well. In Canada, this remains a big challenge. So there's much more to do together.
Thank you. And we know that Canada is working with the Bangladesh government to help meet the needs of Rohingya refugees, as well as those of impacted Bangladeshi communities. However, the situation has persisted for quite a while now, with no end in sight. If the refugee crisis persists for a prolonged period of time, what might be Canada's policy on the matter?
Yes, we spoke about the plight of the Rohingya and how that's an issue we need to ensure that it continues to be a priority for the stability of the Indo-Pacific region and globally as well. And we are concerned that the issue has become now a protracted crisis. There are no magic bullets, there are no quick solutions. So Canada takes an approach that basically recognizes that. So Canada has a three-year response to the Rohingya strategy, and this builds on a previous strategy. So in the past 5 years, Canada has contributed over $500 million of international assistance towards the Rohingya, towards basically ensuring that their basic human needs are met, that they have some measure of security in the camps, and that they have some kind of access to dignified livelihoods. This is essential for them not to lose hope and for the situation to deteriorate even further in the camps. Now, we have to recognize here that Bangladesh has played a very important role, and we really are grateful to the investments that Bangladesh government themselves have made to support the Rohingya population, and also having taken in a million people. That is not something that I've seen anywhere else in the world. One country having taken in so many people so suddenly and in one location. So I think we need to recognize what Bangladesh has contributed, but we need to support that as well. And as I said, we're concerned because the situation in the camps is preoccupying. I think access to education and skills is going to be very important. We also have to recognize that even though, like, all refugees want to go home, but the enabling conditions for them to do so safely have to be there beforehand, and they are not there at present. So I just want you also to know that Canada, in addition to working in Bangladesh, is working at the regional level with other entities in ASEAN and other countries to highlight the plight of the Rohingya refugees. But also we're working to globally, for example, to ensure that the perpetrators of the human rights violations against the Rohingya are taken to court, that they are tried for their crimes against the Rohingya at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. And also having very strong sanctions against Myanmar, the Myanmar military junta, which is at the heart of this conflict.
Madam High Commissioner, do you believe that finding a quick resolution to the crisis should also be a prime component of Canada and the rest of the Western world's in the Pacific strategies?
As I mentioned, there is going to be no quick or easy solution. We have to be ready to work together on this, and not just the Western countries. It's not a Western country issue. We talked about how this is an issue for the Indo-Pacific. It's a global issue as well. So we have to work together.
Only the Westerns are talking about this.
Yeah. Well, I think that I think that everyone is talking about this, and I do know from being quite involved in this work that colleagues from the ASEAN countries are contributing as well. I know that it's not easy when it's in your own backyard. We're all aware of that. But they are also making contributions to the Rohingya strategy. And I think they're also very aware that resolving this crisis is going to be absolutely key for the stability of the region.
Canada's popularity is increasing as a study destination of Bangladeshi students. Many here in Bangladesh are most eager to find education and job opportunities in Canada. How does Canada view the surging trend of Bangladeshis going to Canada to study and find work?
You know, I smile every time that I visit a school or a ministry, and people come to me and tell me that they studied in Canada, and they're just so proud and excited to tell me this. I remember a few months ago, we visited Minister Palak in the Ministry of ICTs, and everybody it's a very interesting environment in the ministry. It's a lot of young people, very dynamic, a lot of innovation. And everybody kept coming to me, saying, I studied in Canada. And the minister was saying, did you plan this? I said, no, I had no idea that there were so many young, intelligent, dynamic people in the ministry that had studied in Canada. So all this to say is that obviously I think it's a win-win situation. I think that today we live in a globalized world, so Bangladeshis having access to globalized education is a plus. Many of them contribute to both of our societies. As I said, I meet many students who've studied in Canada here. You also have many established professors that I've had the pleasure of meeting. Professor Sadiqa Halim, who studied at McGill University and is now a famous sociology professor at University of Dhaka. Professor Imtiaz Hamed, who leads the Genocide Center also at the University of Dhaka. So those people are contributing. But I also want to say that I think the reason that Canadian education has become so popular is because it does have some very distinctive characteristics. Canadian education is mostly public. It's a provincial responsibility, so it means that the quality and the pricing and the value for money is guaranteed at the provincial level. I think that makes it very, very, very unique. The second thing is that Canadian education is linked to the private sector. So it is not separated. It's not just theoretical education. It's about problem solving. So the Bangladeshi students that are studying in Canada are not just connecting and getting access to the latest technology, the latest know-how, but they're getting to work as they study. And they also have the option of staying. But most important, and what I hear most from young people, and especially young women, is that in Canada, they feel included, they feel welcome, they don't feel discriminated, and they feel safe.
Great. And besides trade and geopolitics, people-to-people ties are an important component of bilateral relations between nations. Does Canada have a plan to increase cultural exchange between our two nations?
Absolutely. I think as we've discussed today, a lot of links already exist between our governments, organizations, and between Canadians and Bangladeshis. I think this is the richness of our friendship. The Indo-Pacific strategy is very much about increasing those people-to-people connections, and it's going to include investments in, for example, mechanisms for increased technical assistance for Canada. We as a Canadian mission here, as a diplomatic mission in Bangladesh, truly value those connections. I think I mentioned to you earlier that in my case, for example, I've been taking Bengali dancing lessons from Miss Pooja Sengupta, who's a very talented choreographer and dancer.
Actually, I'm going to ask in these questions. Apart from your diplomatic task, what are the things keep you busy here in Dhaka? It's a dancing class.
Well, this is a dancing class that we're doing at the Canadian High Commission. And for us, it's like a way to learn Bengali dance, but also to learn about the culture and to learn about each other and to find ways to connect with one another. But I mean, we're also working with, for example, painters such as Miss Kanaka Chakma, who has a daughter in Canada, and we're trying to connect her with Indigenous artists in Canada. Or I think I may have mentioned to you also Mr. Mantusir Mamun as well, who just wrote a book about riding a bicycle from Alaska to Toronto and talking about all the people he met along the way. And he also, by the way, sponsors the Banff Film Festival here in Canada. So now, these relations, I mean, we value them. I personally derive tremendous joy from these experiences. They get me out of my diplomatic bubble. But it's really about learning about each other's cultures and coming closer together.
And finally, how do you see the next decade of bilateral relations turn out between Canada and Bangladesh?
So I think that the next decade and the next 50 years, we're going to continue this strong friendship based on mutual respect that we've developed. As I mentioned, we have a lot of things in common between Canada and Bangladesh. We're multilateralists, we're free traders, we value diversity and inclusion, and I think that this is going to lead to even new ways of working together. And I look forward to an increasingly important and multifaceted relationship.
Anything else you need to add?
I just hope that you're going to invite me back.
Indeed. We'll, thank you, Madam High Commissioner, for your most insightful comments. We wish you the best of luck on all your endeavors here in Bangladesh and hope that the bilateral relations between Bangladesh and Canada continue to grow and prosper. Dear viewers, indeed, thank you for joining us. Stay safe and take care.